So let's see how Scarlett Maguire is feeling about the lot of it, a former Labour Party advisor. Scarlett, I'm a huge fan of yours. You know I love you to bits, but this budget, it was ugly.
No, look, we always knew it was going to be a tough budget, right? I mean, we had known for weeks it was going to be a tough budget, and actually, I mean, I think the toughest thing was the national insurance for employers, right? For the rest of it, I mean, actually, it wasn't quite as bad as I expected. She didn't raise fuel duty. She said that instead of keeping the tax thresholds the way they have been for years, which means as soon as when you start getting extra money, you go into a new tax bracket, is that actually she is going to, in 2028, to move them. She put up the minimum wage, which is incredibly important for over 1.5 million people. So actually, it wasn't that bad. We know it was going to be a tough budget because we know that she had to find money for public services. That was the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, talk about that. We know, yeah, she did have to find money for public services. What part of what I've just written down in front of me here? Because the thing is, the Labour Party came into power and straight off the bat did, and the sort of thing any sort of government who hasn't been in power for 14 years might do, which is get a little bit excited about getting things done and laying out their agenda. And part of this was putting up public sector pay, and the other was creating an energy company that actually doesn't make energy. But these things came with a hefty price tag, and then they turn around, have to figure out how they're going to balance the books, blame the previous government for a £22 billion black hole, which even the OBR says they can't seem to find. And then on top of this 22 billion black hole, whacks up taxes by 40 billion. I mean, do you think they could have waited a bit, done the sensible, prudent thing, got settled into office, got the first budget out the way, and then said, right, now we know what we're dealing with, we're going to start rolling out our policies and have them properly costed. They said before the election, yes, everything's costed, it's all fine, we've done our sums, nothing to see here. But it doesn't seem to be the truth.
It is. I mean, look, there was a black hole. How big it was, we can argue, and certainly the Conservatives had promised things that had not been funded. And I mean, two of those were the compensation for the poisoned blood, right, which many people have died of, and it's really important that we give them the money because people are dying of it. It's been going on for decades. And the other thing is the post office scandal, which I think most people feel very strongly about. And there was so those two things were promised by the previous government, but unfortunately not costed. And then there were the public sector pay things that nothing had been put in. But worse than that was that actually, as we know, as I'm sure, Alex, you have said many times, the health service is on its knees. It desperately needs help. So that had to be money. And then you have schools which have crumbly concrete.
You've got my mad disease today, Scarlett. I'm telling you, I can barely string a sentence together. Something about it Thursday after that budget. I think we're all in a state of trauma.
I think for most people, the budget is what they expected.
Well, certainly I think it's what they expected because we were told it was going to be sort of post-apocalyptic for a long time running up to it. That is for sure. And I'm talking about the health service. Wes Streeting himself said, yeah, we're going to wang a load of extra money at it, but it probably won't make a difference. And what we haven't learned is what the reform of it might look like, how this extra money is actually going to get to the places it really needs to be. There seems to be sort of a bit thin on the ground when it comes to we're going to need all this money to pay for certain stuff, but how is this going to improve our lot?
Okay, so there's two different things here. One is we've got to stop the queues, right? We've got to stop the massive waiting lists. We've got to have more appointments. We've got to have that. And that's going to take money. I mean, whether it means you're paying people to work weekends, you're paying people to work in the evenings. I mean, in Israel, they have 24-hour scanning. I mean, you can go in at 3:30 in the morning, right?
Did I just hear someone from the Labour Party say something positive about Israel? Wow!
No, I'm just giving you a fact, right? What I'm saying is that happens. On the other hand, yes, then we need to look at the health service properly, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, the best thing we need is preventative medicine, right? Is that we want to stop people from going into hospital. So we've got to work out how to, bring down their diabetes, sort out obesity, all of that. So all of that is about preventative. And then the social care is actually getting a lot of older people out of hospital who don't want to be there, who shouldn't be there, into their homes where they can be looked after properly. Now, that is going to take reform, and that's going to take time. But in the meantime, we want to have more people. We want to have fewer waits in A&E, fewer waits for what they call elective operations like knees and hips, and for people to actually trust the health service, instead of saying, which is happens at the moment, is once you get there, they're great, but the wait is terrible.
Yeah, I feel like at the corner of my eye, I could see all sorts of huffing and puffing and head shaking. So what's on your mind?
Well, none of this is going to happen quickly. Keir Starmer himself said there's no point in giving new money to any of the departments without there being reform. The reform has been announced in the number of studies that are coming in, but that's not going to report until years and years and years. You're trying to throw money at the NHS to turn your scanning into 24-hour scanning or your operations into 24-hour operations. You've only got a finite number of people that are in there at the moment. They cannot work 20-hour days in doing that to increase capacity because you're paying them a little bit more. It's therefore going to take a number of years to start to recruit more people at the right qualifications, with the right experience to deal with all of this. Throwing money at it is not going to dramatically impact the problems that there are in the different departments. It's like throwing money at the old uncle who has got a gambling habit. And you say, I'm going to fix the gambling habit by giving you more money, uncle. No, you need to fix the habit. And the problem that there is with the NHS, and they're talking about NHS England only, because that's what Wes Streeting is responsible for.
That's true. We always think about
exactly.
the UK.
So NHS Wales is in a worse state, run by Labour. It's the management that there is to deal with it. Unless you deal with that and get our money being spent more efficiently, then there's no point in throwing more good money after bad.
Scarlett, do you think that could potentially be on the cards, though? Because some of the things that Wes Streeting has said, especially prior to the election, he seems to have talked tough in a way that previous Labour shadow health ministers hadn't done before. We know that he went on a fact-finding mission to Singapore. Do you think he will be the man to sort of wield the axe at NHS waste and actually do some significant reforms that is going to make it far more efficient and make that extra money go somewhere?
Yeah, no, I do think that he is going to put in reforms to the NHS, which are serious. But I mean, first of all, what everybody says is they come out of hospital and they go, if only they did X or Y or whatever. And so actually he's listening to those people. And back in 97, I mean, what they did was they made the nurses, I know for bowel cancer, go through the whole process with a patient to find out actually how you can make it much better, how you can make it less humiliating. I mean, it's completely changed the way they do it. So what he's got to do is he's got to be, but it's not going to take years. It's not going to take years. It's going to come out next year. There is no question about that. I mean, Wes is a man in a hurry. He's not going to sit there. And the first thing he did was to get Darcy, who is a former health minister, now in the Lords, one has to say a top surgeon, to do a sort of quick and dirty thing. This is where we are now. This is what has to be done immediately. Now you can have a longer one.
In fact, if you just saw me smirk there, by the way, Scarlett, it's because someone sent in a message, Dave from Bristol, saying, Alex, scary. You may have caught Reevesitis, which causes people to see black holes which don't really exist. I mean, forgetting Phillips' name earlier. That's brilliant wit, can I just say, Dave in Bristol. Let's talk about defence, shall we? Because it's very clear we live in a deeply unstable world. You've had North Korea blasting a sort of missile which should potentially make us all quake in our boots. We've got situations going on in the Middle East, in Ukraine, terrorism, Al-Qaeda back on the radar. Defence funding Yes, it's going up, 3 billion. I mean, that's kind of coins down the back of the sofa, isn't it, really, when it comes to a budget? Still short of the 2.5%, which is supposed to be the minimum. Why on earth aren't the Labour Party looking at what's going on around the world and saying, blimey, if we're going to put money somewhere, you know, perhaps the public sector could have waited for their pay rise. We've all got to, you know, bear the burden. Perhaps the creation of GB Energy and all of these projects could have, you know, taken a little bit longer, because surely we need weapons, we need troops, and we need to be able to protect ourselves.
Actually, if you look at defence procurement, I mean, that is one of the places that need the most reform. Almost every big ticket deal in defence procurement goes masses over budget and is done properly. So I think it's completely right that we put more money in, but actually at the same time we say, what are we doing and how do we make sure? I mean, you know, we end up with aircraft carriers that planes can't land on. This is. We've got to do it properly, and defence is one of the places where we really need to do it properly.
But should there have been an ambition to meet the 2.5% target at the very least? Yes, talk about reforming it. Yes, talk about making sure the money is being spent properly. Perhaps having a look at the fact there are more civil servants in the MOD than there are people in the RAF and the Navy put together. But surely meeting that commitment is vital when we're going to face our partners in NATO, when Donald Trump potentially becomes the next US president and bangs the desk and say, why aren't you coughing up what you're supposed to? And given everything going on in the world, that should have probably been a priority, surely.
Well, I mean, it clearly was a priority. I mean, there were only 3 departments that got extra money up front, right? Education, health and defence. And those are the 3 most important.
I mean defence got 3 billion quid, while Ed Miliband's vanity project of creating, you know, GB Energy got about 3 times that much money. I know where I'd rather the cash money be going, and it ain't on his wimwams.
Well, you and I completely and utterly disagree about what Ed Miliband is doing. And what he's trying to do is to actually make us a leading country in renewables, which means that we can start exporting. It means that the price of energy comes down, which affects absolutely everybody in the country. That's what he's trying to do, right? And he's set out how he's going to do it, and that's fine. And
is he doing it by sending a big charity check over to China and saying, please develop this technology while we stop drilling for gas and oil, which could potentially help pave the way to an energy transition? I've never understood why one doesn't look at fossil fuels as potentially the answer to help us get to that next stage.
Look, we are still absolutely dependent on fossil fuels. What he's trying to
Not our own, though. That's what's mad.
We're still getting things from the North Sea. There's absolutely no question about that. But what we have to do is we have to transition, and we have to work out how we're going to transition. And it's good for the country, it's good for the world, and it's good for all of our pockets, and that's what matters. But going back to defence, I mean, of course we're there. I mean, remember, we're still among the European countries, right? We're one of the highest spending per capita on defence. We take it very, very seriously. We went straight to defend Ukraine, which was a cross-party thing. I mean, you know, all Tories, all Labour absolutely want to defend Ukraine. We're sending tanks there. What we're trying to do is avoid a war with Russia, which I think is a very good thing. That, of course, we're taking defence seriously.
Scarlett, thank you ever so much. It's always great catching up with you. Now, I tell you what, if someone could have wired Big Phil into the grid right then, I reckon he could have powered Battersea Power Station. Go on. Yeah,
definitely. Well, you know, a couple of things. Aircraft can land on aircraft carriers. That's not a problem. Tanks, we've sent very few to Ukraine, but you know, we are developing 143 Challenger 3 tanks. Poland has just bought 1,000. Their defence budget is significantly smaller than ours. There is no accountability in defence, and Scarlett is 100% right. Defence equipment and support, the procurement division needs completely rewiring. It needs disbanded and reconstructed, because there's zero accountability in there. But you know, 2.9 billion being given to defence next year. They're just having to pay an awful lot more national insurance for their employees. There's issues with the potentially with the pension payments that are going out. Oh, and every government department, and this has been missed in a lot of the commentary. At the very beginning, Rachel Reeves turned around and said, we've imposed a 2% cut on in-year money for every government department this year. I brought that in July. So they've got 2% down at the minute. This 2.9 billion is going to start to plug a hole that's just been created. It's gone already.
Oh, there you are, folks. Good luck to us if the dark day comes where we need to defend ourselves.